Hello fellow collectors, I hope you are doing wonderfully well. Today I continue on with my series where I talk about the best films I watched in the preceding month. March was a month where I again watched quite a decent amount, but was actually worrying I might not have much to talk about or too many to choose from for this video, as lots of films I saw were just fairly average watches and actually a couple I found a little disappointing. But thankfully the month ended very strongly indeed, and so strongly in fact that I did end up having a good few to choose from, and so there will certainly be a few honourable mentions at the end. And so, without any further ado, let's talk about the best films I watched in March. First up is a rewatch for me, and it's World War Z. From 2013 and directed by Mark Foster, it stars Brad Pitt, Mireille Enos, Daniela Kertész and a good few others. Now, I know this one isn't as widely regarded, particularly judging from the very humble 3.1 rating on Letterboxd, but what can I say, I love this one. I loved it when I originally saw it, and upon this, which I think is my third rewatch, though probably my first in about 5 years, well, I still love it now. It's a vigorous and thrilling ride, a real boiling pot of tension, and a film full of moments that will get your heart pounding. It's also full of the unexpected, with unexpected deaths occurring at several points throughout the film, where you think, surely that person has plot armour, surely they'll make it, but actually they don't. And I think so much of that is what keeps me as engaged as I am, and it definitely enhances the story and makes things feel earned. Now sure, I think that there are maybe a couple contrived moments, or perhaps some moments that feel more than a little unlikely, but overall I think it really works well. I did watch the extended version, which adds about 15 minutes I think, and to be honest I wish it had been even longer. Brad Pitt is great as usual, and no, she certainly doesn't have anywhere near enough to do. Mireille Enos is also fantastic to watch. Now, I am definitely a big fan of a lot of particularly more modern zombie films, like Zombieland and Little Monsters, which is very underrated and underseen I think, or Train to Busan and One Cut of the Dead. And whilst perhaps not attaining such heights as the latter two, I certainly think this one holds its own, and absolutely has its place among my favourites of the genre. Up next is the classic western Stagecoach. From 1939 and directed by John Ford, it stars a great ensemble cast, including Claire Trevor, Thomas Mitchell, Andy Devine, John Carradine, and also John Wayne, for whom this film was his first starring role, and really the one that kicked off his career. I've wanted to watch this one for a long time now, especially having had such a western focus during my whole year last year of 2023. But sadly this one isn't available in the UK. I haven't ever seen it on streaming or Blu-ray here, though I believe there was a stream of it available in the past, but apparently the quality was shockingly bad. By chance, however, I came across a HD stream of it on Amazon, which I had not seen available before, so for the humble price of £3.50 I went and took the chance, and I thought the quality was fine, and it was so good that I decided to import this lovely Criterion edition so I could have it readily available to watch again. Despite my expectations and knowing this film's reputation, it really lived up to the hype. It was a fantastic western, with plenty of comedy, action, romantic tension, and just a great set of characters. It felt like a very tight story. There's no extra fat here that could be edited away. Everything works so well and contributes to the overall tale. Each character here feels more or less like a real person, with their qualities and flaws being very much out in the open and on display for us all to see. John Wayne, who I'm rarely very fond of, actually does a solid job here and gives a good all-round performance as the Ringo Kid. This was fast-paced, with some great drama and that constant shadow of threat of attack hanging over them at all times, and it really made for a captivating watch. This is one film that is definitely worthy of its reputation. Then we have The China Syndrome. From 1979 and directed by James Bridges, it stars Jane Fonda, Jack Lemmon, Michael Douglas, as well as Wilford Brimley, an actor I keep coming across purely by chance at the moment. I bought this film originally on the strength of its cast, but I wasn't in any particular rush to watch it. But it's so often the case that it's usually those films that sit on my shelf for far too long that are actually the best ones, because this one was fantastic. despite the fact that all the characters seem to play certain well-worn types. For example, Douglas the hippie, ready to blow the lid off just about anything and stick it to the man, and Fonda the reporter wanting a scoop. The film never gives in to any sort of cringe or cheesiness that I associate with that sort of thing. It never overplays any part of it. The story is so well constructed, starting small, and we get to know these characters bit by bit. We see their world and their lives, and it sets us up for the big punches to come. It really became a riveting watch and ended incredibly well. Such a brilliant ending, in fact, that it left me sat there in some shock. Completely unexpected and very powerful. The film, though, never gives in to sort of scare tactics, I don't think. It never gives in to contrivance. It's just a solid story that presents its facts and dangers, and far too similar to real life, provides us with the shameful question as to companies placing dollar values on people's lives. This is also a brilliant ensemble of actors, and even though I often think that I'm not all that keen on Jane Fonda, in almost everything I see her in, she's fantastic, so I'm not really sure why, and The China Syndrome was no different. She's absolutely brilliant here. Though for me, the standout was definitely Jack Lemmon. I've not really seen him in anything other than his big classic comedies, but here, my goodness, it reminded me of Robin Williams' range of being able to do the silliest characters and the most serious, as Lemmon absolutely nails his role here. Though I think undoubtedly a film of its time, in so much as it feels born out of the nuclear fear associated so closely with the Cold War, yet it retains a relevancy in its other themes that still hits really hard, even today. And last but not least, we have The Hotspot. And now, while I did rate a couple of the films in March higher than this one, I really wanted to talk about it because I just enjoyed it so much. It's from 1990 and directed by Dennis Hopper. This one stars Don Johnson, Virginia Madsen, Jennifer Connelly and William Sadler, as well as Jerry Hardin, who I was not expecting to see. I've been rewatching The X-Files recently and was surprised to see him turn up in this as well. Though this is a neo-noir film, I thought that it also had this wonderful air of a western about it. A lone stranger rides into a small town, though instead of riding a horse he's driving a car. And together the noir and western elements combine to make a potent and excellent mixture here that I found utterly engaging. The heat, the haze, the dust, you can almost feel it all pouring off the screen as you watch this one. Again, we have a film here where the characters play certain types, and again it all just works so well. We have the handsome and dangerous stranger, the femme fatale, we have the innocent young girl, and the temptations of crime and wealth. It's like Hopper said, let's make a film where you feel like the fuse has been lit from the very beginning and we are just waiting for its inevitable explosion. This is the first time I've watched a film with Don Johnson, and I thought he was pretty great here, like he was sort of made for this kind of role. The standout for me though was definitely Virginia Madsen, who seems to play an anthropomorphic grenade that could go off at any time. Whenever she is on the screen, she oozes danger and potential destruction, and it is absolutely brilliant. A solid film all round that delivers what it promises, and one that I'll definitely look forward to revisiting in the future. And just before I get on to my honourable mentions, I thought I'd bring back a segment, if you will, that I started last month, where I mentioned the films that I hadn't quite made my mind up on yet. Ones that might have been particularly interesting or deep or mysterious in some way, and that I'm still thinking about. And I have just one of those for this month, which I'd like to talk about briefly, and it's Mike Leigh's Naked. If you've seen this one, you'll probably understand how it's a hard one to pin down and categorise. It has to do with ambiguity and self-destruction, I think. It plays into the variance to be found between intelligence and the heart. A film about cruelty, frustration and fear, yet one where we find characters also seeking connection, safety and love. David Thewlis in particular of course gives a superb performance, but really the whole cast works terrifically well to form this kind of dark world. For me, it also brought into question the idea of, does fate exist? Do we keep running until we find what we are supposed to find? Is that what leads us away from potentially good things? I'm not sure. A difficult watch at times, but one that was certainly incredibly interesting. And that at last brings us on to my honourable mentions. First up is Scott of the Antarctic. a dramatised retelling of Captain Scott's attempt to reach the South Pole, with some great performances here and some really riveting stuff. Then U571, which I don't think I've seen since it came out, so we're talking over 20 years, and it was great to revisit. I remember my young eyes enjoyed it back then, and my slightly older eyes still enjoyed it now. I streamed this one, but it is one I hope to pick up soon, as it's a great World War II film. Next is The Importance of Being Earnest, which was a wonderful British comedy with some hilarious performances. And last but not least, we have Agnes Varda's Bonheur, which was a beautifully and quietly savage watch, and I think probably impossible to talk about very much without spoiling it. And so, that brings us to the end of the video and the end of my March in film. I hope yours was also a great one, and I hope your April has been going wonderfully as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.